Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Phoebe, and I'm a social media executive at Thompson Alexander, a testing consultancy. And we are looking forward to discussing the LGBTQ plus community and diversity, inclusion in testing. So I am joined today by three wonderful people who have agreed to be part of our discussions, and I'll let you each introduce yourselves and let us know kind of your name and what you do. So I can start with Callum if you like.
Hi everyone, I'm Callum Akehurst-Ryan, a senior tester in Improbable. I've got about 14 years of experience in testing across a number of different domains, from finance, public safety, e-commerce, you name it. And for all of those, I've been an out member of the LGBTQIA plus community.
Amazing, thank you. Jasper?
Hello, my name is Jasper. I've been a tester for over 20 years. I'm a test manager now. Well, I have been a test manager for at least 5 or 6 years. Currently working for a mortgage servicing company, which deals with live production software testing changes that go into make sure that people's mortgages are serviced properly. I've also been an out member of the community in my testing. Yeah, that's me.
Brilliant. And last but certainly not least, Caroline, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Caroline, or Cads as I'm more commonly known. I have been in software testing for about 20 years as well, doing lots of different roles in testing, test management, etc., and consultancy. I've only sort of recently come out because I've just never really thought I had to sort of talk about it. Just being in sort of places I've worked in, it just wasn't talked about, so that's me.
That's actually quite an interesting point to start. Is you felt like it wasn't was it either that it wasn't needed to be talked about in the spaces, or that it wasn't something you thought you could bring up?
It was just something that never came up. It was working in like various industries, like from the oil industry. It's always been sort of very male-dominated industry that testing is, and that's where we've ended up working in process engineering places like this. And I guess it was never talked about, but each sort of organisation, company I've been with have been a bit different. I do know that the 13 years that I spent at one company, we didn't really talk about pride, we didn't talk about being gay or out or being transgender and things like that. It wasn't talked about in the office, and maybe I have to admit sometimes it would be ridiculed by some people, so I never felt comfortable talking about it. And then nobody ever asked, because obviously I was, appeared to be heterosexual because I always had boyfriends. So I think it's only recently, the last couple of years, a group of people that I've met outside of work, and also moving in different organisations as well. And pride is quite important to my current organisation. It's talked about quite a lot, and we do have a diverse range of people within the team, especially the testing team. It's definitely evident that there's a lot more diversity there than there is in any other organisation I've ever been in.
That's great. Yeah, I have to say, I'm not a tester, but I work in the testing industry, and it's, from my experience so far, it's one of the most kind of diverse and inclusive spaces I've seen in kind of a workplace format. Is that something that is only just happening over the last few years as discourse has opened up, or has it always been that way, do you feel? I guess that's open to everyone.
Yeah, I would say that testing tends to, or has tended to, be a bit more diverse than sort of a lot of other branches of engineering. It is still predominantly sort of straight cisgendered white men, as a lot of these computer science or engineering type roles are, but I've been very lucky to work with a number of different test managers, women, people from the LGBTQIA plus community. So generally slightly more diverse, but again, in comparison to a predominantly just very male-oriented, very cisgendered, white male-oriented community.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. It's very much in comparison, isn't it? Because there's nowhere that really has the ideal. You've definitely still got a lot of way to go. So in terms of in the workplace and in testing, what does inclusion and diversity like to you, like each of you?
Well, I always aim to have a very diverse team. You know, I've had between 5 people and 25 people working for me over the years. And I've always prided myself that I try and get people from different cultures, different backgrounds. It's quite difficult to find people in the LGBT community who actively look for it, because people don't put it on you don't necessarily put it on your CV. But as a natural way that I've tried to run my teams, I found that I've got quite a diverse team. And I've done that on purpose because there have been studies that showed that teams of projects with the same kind of people, same background, same mentality, same training, they're not as successful as teams where people come from different backgrounds. And inclusion, I think inclusion comes first, trying to find the people to be a diverse team. And then once you have that inclusion, you have the diversity, you have the additional experience and knowledge and background that makes a team a stronger, more collaborative, more creative team.
Just to speak to that, Jasper, there's something really interesting around that. I've been doing some talks around D&I in testing specifically, and how one of the biggest, as a tester at the very least, one of the biggest heuristics that you can use in testing or exploratory testing is your own life experiences. And by having a different life experience, by bringing to your authentic self into a team, you're able to help inform solution or product design and implementation through that. I've been calling it socially informed delivery. So just as an example of that, when I've been working in the finance industry, talking about spouses or talking about marriage or weddings, top of mind for me is to say, what about civil partners? What about civil partnerships? What about common law relationships? Things like that. And it's not something that couldn't be thought of by somebody else or another tester. But because it's top of mind for me, it's in my frame of experience being somebody, who is LGBTQIA+. It's just, I have that heuristic to mind and I can bring it to the table to help that delivery. So shifting away from, like you said, a monoculture of everybody thinking the same way is really beneficial for any development team.
Yeah, definitely. I think you can say that kind of across board for all teams. The more diverse you are, the more experience you have, everyone can call back on that, and the way you think of things is so different. I think that's actually a really interesting point when you come to testing specifically, because if you're doing things like, exploratory testing, obviously the way each of us would use a software product would be so different. So do you feel that kind of the diversity is really key for having a successful testing? I think anyone.
Again, I can speak to that in... Do you want me to speak to that?
Yeah.
Go for it, and then I'll
brilliant.
Afterwards, so you go first.
Yeah, so again, like I said, that heuristic that you can use of your own life experience, bringing that to the table is very different, especially within exploratory testing. Exploratory testing definitely focuses on that systematic uncovery of information through the system. It's not that scripted, prescriptive testing that we're used to back in the day, although exploratory testing has been around since the 80s, but it still seems fresh and modern to a lot of people. With that in mind, you need to be able to come up with test ideas very quickly in order to implement the tests that you're thinking of as you do them. So having different people with those different thought processes, looking for different things, is very much going to give you a much better coverage of testing that you wouldn't get from, say, scripted testing. If you have people thinking the same way about the product, thinking in that engineering monoculture, just looking at the happy path, because that's all they're thinking about, you're effectively just doing scripted testing again and again and again, and you're not getting the benefits that come from say, an exploratory testing approach, where you're looking for new information, uncovering the unknowns, and thinking about potentially different personas of users that come from having that diverse background, because you can be sure that your customer base will probably be a lot more diverse than your engineering base.
Yeah, definitely.
Certainly in my team, I've got two people, one person who's registered blind, who can see, but has to have special equipment in order to be able to help, and the other person has sight in only one eye, and they're both colourblind. Now, these experiences, I think that I mean, they appeared in my interview list, so that was a thing. But certainly, from my experience of exclusion, or not being able to convey my thoughts and ideas as an honest person, as who I actually am, I think that has meant that I've aimed for a more diverse team, not only for LGBTQ, but for backgrounds, capabilities, and reaching out to people who actually use our software and asking them, what's your experience like? And that's actually expands the coverage of the testing team and the knowledge and the experience, just by being so open and inclusive.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you for that, Jasper. So going back to something you said earlier, Jasper, in terms of, so you obviously want to create as much diversity within your teams, how do you go about doing that? Because obviously it is quite difficult, like you said, no one writes their full identity on their CV. So how do you then create such a diverse team?
I enjoy interviewing. But before even interviewing, it's a difficult thing to say, but I like good CVs. I like fun CVs. I like a CV that tells a story and tells me about a person before I interview them. And that maybe prejudging is not the healthiest of things, but it's not been a problem for me at this time. Having a name on the CV that's from a culture that I've never experienced before or never heard of before. I'll look up the name and find out about that culture, and then introduce that into the interview process. And then that'd be a telephone interview or a Zoom interview, and then maybe an on-site interview. And just looking for differences that can add experience is what I find key to trying to include diversity in my team.
Just to speak to this a bit as well, one of the really awesome things, especially around Pride Month, is being able to identify those companies that actually are getting in there, showcasing their people, showcasing that they value difference and value pride. We're seeing a lot of companies at the moment who are changing their logos, who are giving money to charities, queer charities, or getting involved in Pride. And they're writing blog posts about Pride. They're putting up things about their employees who are LGBTQIA+. This is all really important. As somebody, when I'm looking for a job, I'm looking for those companies to know that I can come and be my authentic self. I can come and do business with them. I can come and do Pride with them, maybe go on a float. I don't know. Really exciting things. So I think especially around Pride Month, seeing those companies that are celebrating Pride, that are getting involved with Pride, and going back to their staff that are LGBTQ, it's showing that they're opening the doors to people. So it's less about saying, like, the interview process. It's even before then. It's the, am I self-selecting to come and work at this company point of view? And I know some people will sneer and some people will eye roll at the idea of rainbow washing and they'll say, oh, they've put an icon up. Oh, good for them. They've changed their logo to have a rainbow. But, what this goes to show is it's a starting point. And a lot of these companies have only done that because they have LGBTQIA+ networks at that company who have asked for it or have said, hey, what are we doing for Pride? So it does, even in a small way, it starts to show that this company is engaging with those staff. And it starts to show me, as a potential employee, yes, I can come and be my authentic self there, and do some really great work. So I think even before, somebody getting the CVs, doing that kind of thing early on at your company is really going to start the ball rolling for opening up those doors, getting more people from diverse backgrounds in, and engaging with the LGBTQIA plus community.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. My last interview experience was amazing because obviously they had stuff on their website that I could look at, and I think it was one of the first sort of interview experiences and companies who I actually talked about it in the interview process, whereas I've never ever done that before in any interview, so that was a relief. It really did make me happy that this was such an amazing sounding company. That is, I jumped on it as soon as the offer was there. It's like, yes, I want to work with these people because they're inclusive, they actually are doing things for the community, and there was such a culture within the organisation. I've never seen this or experienced this in any other companies. And compared to my previous company, it was very, very sad where because I had the transgender flag on my an app that we used to chat with people, and somebody did reach out to me who was also transgender, and we were sort of talking about the experiences that they were having, and they just were too scared to even talk about it in the company. They hadn't actually been to the physical company because they were hiding from everybody, and they were working remotely, and that was just so heartbreaking. So to move from that sort of organisation to where it's just fully open and accepting was wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I think what the important difference there is not just being diverse and inclusive, but celebrating that side of things, and kind of the people who are either already working with you and allowing them to have that safe space where they do feel they can be themselves and have those conversations that are so important to have, both inside and outside the workplace, but also have events and get people talking. I think that's kind of where it really needs to start.
Yeah, especially within the tech industry and within engineering, because again, we've talked about how male dominated it is, and I'm sure we've all been through that thing in the past of you can't be emotional in engineering. Everything has to be based on logic. Everything has to be mechanical or mathematical. But showcasing things like Pride now, showcasing and celebrating the differences between people, allowing themselves to bring not just their emotions but their authentic self into the environment is really starting to change up the industry. Because for too long we've definitely had it where it was a case of unless you can just do things logically or have this kind of view of monoculture where everyone thinks the same way because they had the same computer science degree or whatever it was, then other than that you were sort of pushed down. We're now trying to lift up, and by celebrating people we're really starting to say, hey, come and be yourself, come and work with us and be yourself, which is great to see.
Yeah, definitely. It's a huge transformation, I think, over the years from, I think Jasper, it's kind of in line with what you said earlier as well, of CVs maybe before, we were looking for similarities and commonalities between someone's experience and the company or the rest of your team, and really it needs to be the opposite. It needs to be, what does this person have that I don't currently have on my team, or whether that's a technical experience or cultural or identity. I think that's a really great way of looking at it.
I think it's got to be a top-down thing. From my experience working with different companies, is that if you've got a small team of people who are like an LGBT diversity team, they don't really get a voice unless the executives have, and in my company I've experienced this, executives are actively promoting diversity and inclusion in the company, and the HR department are brilliant. They are headlining different areas of diversity, and making sure that the Pride Month is being listened to, and information about the positives and the struggles of the LGBT community are spread within the company through daily news, daily blog posts, daily publications of stuff that's happening. So top down is where it has to happen.
No, definitely. If that's the case as well, though, and you are someone in a company who doesn't necessarily have that there, how do you start that conversation or start that ball rolling?
That's a good question.
So I've been part of a number of different groups and a number of different D&I groups where we've been very grassroots. That we've started these conversations and communications. So even if you don't have sort of an executive level board that are top down, you can definitely start by having those conversations and finding allies within yourself. Start to have those Slack channels, start to have those meetups for saying LGBTQIA plus and allies. Really important to say and allies for these groups, because you don't want people to have to out themselves if they don't want to. So you can have like an inclusive community there where you found a support network effectively, and there's always strength in numbers, definitely, but also it will start to show you that by having people around you, if you are one vocal person, you can have a difference. You'll start to see that even if you are that person, just saying, hey, we're not all the same here, or hey, like, I'm this camp, deal with it, etc. Other people will start to message you in these groups and be like, oh, thank you for saying that. You'll always be helping people in these ways. But again, grassroots things can start to bubble up and influence people at that top level as well. So you'll start to get more buy-in. Remember, you can always win over more flies with honey than with vinegar.
Yeah.
So again, start to do things. Start to have initiatives for educating people of what Pride is. I've done bake sales with all the money going to the Albert Kennedy Trust in the local area. Where we had a techie brekkie, like a breakfast, talking specifically about Pride and engineering in Pride as well, to start to say things about like Alan Turing. We talked as well as about Edie Windsor, one of the IBM's senior programmers, who was an LGBT activist. Starting just to bring it home to say, a lot of the engineers that you stand on the shoulders of come from this community. We've always been there. So just winning people over in those ways as well. And again, people then higher up start to notice these things. You can then start to have that conversation about opening doors, bringing people, more diverse candidates in by writing blog posts. And you can write those blog posts, get them out there and show why it's a good thing. So again, grassroots up works as a starting position. And it can just be as easy as coming into your stand-ups and saying, hi everyone, happy Pride Month, here's a Pride fact for you. Something which I found has been taken very well during this month. Just explain what all these rainbows actually mean to people. Spoiler alert, it means that the person designing it was a complete hippie and in the 70s, and all those colours mean things like magic and nature and serenity. So yeah.
No, that's brilliant. I love that. Thank you. So I think one last question I have is, so I think I know Caroline and Jasper, you will have this experience as kind of creating teams. Once you have that team in place, how do you create a space that is welcoming and safe for people to be who they really are and be their authentic selves?
Good question. I think for me, the last team I worked with, most of them were onboarded remotely. So it was just making sure that we had those constant comms open, chats and tea breaks together, like we would have done in the workplace. That was really, really important to us, just to make sure, check in, how are you doing today? And obviously, I'm quite open about my life, what's going on in my family, as well as myself. So, I like to pick up bits of conversations and find out what's going on in everybody else's life. And I think just having that sort of relaxed atmosphere makes people feel that they can say what they want to say. Obviously, in the realms of not saying anything that would hurt or upset or harm somebody else, but also let them be inquisitive and learn as well in those environments. It's obviously building my team, they have to get to know me and what's going on at home in my family, and being able to share the experiences with them. And I also talked about Pride, I'm involved with Pride in St. Neots, and even what we were doing from 1 week, and we obviously talked about the Pride's Got Talent thing as well, and just generating that culture that as sort of being managing the team, that whatever was happening in your life is absolutely fine to talk about. It's an open team, we can talk about anything. And I think it's really important to make people feel relaxed, make them feel included in all the conversations that I was having with work as well, and also just keeping it friendly.
No, I think that's
I build on that.
Yeah, carry on, Jasper.
It was a timing thing. Mental health and well-being is really important to me, and being very open about it in our groups, because I think, having been somebody who was in the closet for a number of years, that develops bad habits mentally, anxiety, leading to stress. And I've found that if you're open about my own mental health and well-being, people are honest about theirs, and they will honestly say to you, by the way, I'm queer, I'm gay, I'm bi, there's even more. And it's just, being honest with yourself, being honest with everybody else, and thinking about mental health and well-being, that's what I would focus.
I just want to echo what both Kaz and Jasper said there, and just also add to it to say that visibility really helps, especially what Jasper was saying around being able as himself to bring that and have people come to him to say, yes, I am too. It's worth saying that more than a third of LGBTQIA people have hidden who they are in the workplace for fear of discrimination. And that fear comes from the unknown, not knowing that you won't be okay or safe in the workplace, that you'll be diminished for your contributions. We know that 1 in 5 LGBTQIA staff have been the target of negative comments because of their sexuality or their gender identity or expression. So having people who are visible, especially people who are visible at those higher levels in the engineering chains, really helps, because it shows that the company is representative, that people are not held back because of being out in the workplace, that you have allies who are up there who are going to have your back as well. And also it just shows that the more people that are out, or if they are out, and they're not being targeted with little attacks all the time, that this is a safer space and other people can be too. So I would say kudos to both Jasper and to Kaz there for saying, being out in the workplace and showing that there are people, in that management level who are, LGBTIQ+, because that's going to inspire other people as well, and help those people, those third of people who are hiding who they are. It's going to give them inspiration and show them that when they're ready and when they feel comfortable to, it's going to be something that they're able to do as well, hopefully one day, and be able to be their authentic self.
Yeah, definitely. I think the two key main things there that work hand in hand are visibility and talking. So you need the people who are comfortable enough and confident in themselves enough to feel safe to be who they are, be their authentic selves, like you said, to then also start that conversation so someone can see that there's someone like them there, and that they can talk to that person, and then that starts ball rolling, like you said, that as that becomes more of an occurrence and we have more visibility, we then have more conversations with it, which then it's kind of almost like a rolling down a hill, those two in tandem. And I think that's really, I think that's the direction we're going in just now, which is brilliant. Well, I think that's a good point to wrap it all up. Does anyone else have any kind of last comments they want to make, or any kind of thing they want to discuss before we kind of end?
And to say, I think it's great that we're talking about these types of issues and celebrating pride within engineering. If for nothing else, and just to speak to people, who maybe haven't been through this before, imagine trying to solve complex mathematical or engineering problems whilst critically watching yourself every moment to make sure that you're butch enough, to make sure that you've not said, I don't butch enough. I mean, imagine this trying. But trying to hide who you are, wasting all that emotional and intellectual effort on something that's basically because you're scared. Imagine having to monitor yourself whilst trying to solve horrendously complex engineering problems, you're monitoring yourself to say, am I safe enough to come out to the people around me? So if nothing else, from a strictly engineering perspective, don't you want your colleagues to be using their full brain power on solving engineering problems rather than having to waste it on something like that? So by celebrating Pride, by getting involved, by being inspiring, by supporting your LGBTQIA+ colleagues, you're also helping us to help you to solve those engineering problems with our full brain power and attention.
Definitely. No, that's fantastic. That's a really good point. You spend so much time thinking about one thing that is really important, obviously, but if that person just felt safe enough, they would be able to just be more present in the work and as a team member, and it works hand in hand, really.
Yeah. Healthier environment, happier, healthier environment.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. Well, thank you each of you for your time today. I really appreciate it. It's been lovely having a discussion with you all. Hopefully the first of many, if we can get the ball rolling. And before we end, I will link we've got a variety of useful information and Pride and LGBTQIA+ groups and communities in testing that I will link all below. Of course, it's not an exhaustive list, and this is not an exhaustive conversation either. There's surely going to be lots that we haven't covered, but hopefully this will open up the conversation for those discussions. So thank you each of you for sharing your experiences. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.